And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
Government should be a partner. Partner.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone. Gone.
All right, hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of the Global Crypto Podcast with Paxful. Of course, Paxful, the leading P2P marketplace and Bitcoin wallet on the African continent. With us today is the CSO, the Chief Strategy Officer of Blockstream, and of course, one of the co-hosts of Magical Crypto Podcast. His name is Samson Mow. Samson, welcome to the Global Crypto Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, James.
So, Samson, I know you've been on South African media before with Crypto Man Ran, and of course you work pretty closely with our very own Monero maintainer, no longer lead maintainer, of course, Fluffy Pony. How much acquaintance do you have with South Africa and the African continent?
I think that's about it. And I also know the guys at Globy a bit, because we use them for a couple things. I know that you like address each other as Boat, right? So I learned that from Ricardo, and that's about the extent.
Pretty close. I mean, it's not quite Boat, it's Boot, but that's pretty close. Not bad. That's a good memory, that's for sure. So let's come back to yourself, Samson. I want to talk about your origin story. You studied business administration, then went into esports and gaming almost straight out of college. Tell us about that move toward gaming. I mean, business administration into gaming. Tell us about that.
So I did a double concentration. I did marketing and management information systems. So that back in the day, it was like building websites and web development, database design, stuff like that. And I actually had wanted to start a web development company, and I was going to do that with my cousin at the time, but I got an offer from Relic. I was kind of known in the StarCraft community, and Relic, I don't know if you know, but they do real-time strategy games. They did Dawn of War and Company of Heroes, and they were looking for people to be in the balance department. So what that is, it's like a group internally that helps to adjust the gameplay and make it fair. So in real-time strategy like StarCraft or like games like that, you have different races or factions. So you have like Zerg, Protoss, and Terran. And what you need to do is make sure that they're all more or less equal. So, if you're playing chess, it's very easy. It's a mirror image, right? But when you have multiple factions with different units, then it can get really icky. And the more complex thing with Relic's games is they added physics to it too.
Wow.
So not only do you have different units, but there is physics at play too, which means like some units can throw other units. So you have to tune all those variables to make sure like if I fling this guy this far, he can get up quickly and run back into combat. But it was my team's job to essentially make it a fair match, no matter which faction was up against which faction.
And I mean, there you are studying marketing verticals inside business administration. Are you planning on all of those kind of tweaks and variables, game development versus what you study? A lot of people today are of the understanding that you don't necessarily need to study software engineering to become a fair coder, at least. But back then, it needed some kind of foundation. So you obviously had some kind of solid understanding of software and coding before you went into it.
Yeah, I'm a web developer, or I used to be a web developer. I don't think I can keep up now, but back then I could, code up a website, HTML, JavaScript, and everything like that. But I think it's a good foundational thing to have to understand how to code, because everything is software these days, and understanding that helps you understand different pieces of the puzzle and how they come together, and it just helps you in your career, I think.
Yeah. What advice would you give to young people now who want to go and study? Would they benefit from going to university, or would it be a simple thing of just learning everything they can about code? Or should they go and study software engineering?
Well, it depends. I think there is something to be said for going to university and learning it. But the question is, if you go to a branded university and it's really expensive, I think there's some diminishing returns. Maybe it's just good for networking and you make some friends there and they can be your business partners in the future. But like really actually learning stuff, like I think you can learn yourself. You can be self-taught. For coding, I think if you're passionate about it, you can teach yourself too. Like the reason why I excelled at game development was because I'm a very hardcore gamer. I was a hardcore gamer. I don't have that much time these days to play, but when you're very hardcore and you try to master a game. So my method of playing a game is I get super into it and into the tiny nitty-gritty details. And you're making strategies to break the game essentially or find an advantage. And that's just how I played every single game I really played. So I played StarCraft like that, Warcraft 3 like that. I played Lineage like that. And when you get really deep down into the mechanics and the metagame, that's when you can actually understand the game. Like it's not just I play it like Call of Duty and I'm done, right? But that's how I get into it. And that same thing applies to I think anything. If you're really passionate about it, just like learn everything you can about it, absorb all the knowledge you can, read everything you can, and master it. And I don't think that requires someone to handhold you and teach you. But having a degree is useful, I think, because it provides mobility. If you're looking to get a work permit in another country, so I went to work in China at Ubisoft. If I didn't have my degree, they wouldn't have been able to get me that work permit, or it would have been very difficult to get the work permit.
I want to touch on what you just said there about you not having much time for gaming, and yet it's something that you're clearly passionate about. Take me through where you're at now in your own life. You've become pretty successful. You've had a wonderful career to date. You could probably, I'd imagine you could probably lean back a little bit and make more time for gaming, but you're clearly thoroughly enjoying your work. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I would say I enjoy what I do at Blockstream. So at Blockstream, I'm overseeing product development, business development, and what else? Marketing. And I enjoy it. I like what Blockstream is doing. I really believe in Blockstream's mission to re-architect finance. And I still have my game company that I started in 2011, Pixelmatic. So we are actually building an MMO game called Infinite Fleet. And I think, instead of playing a game, I'm building this game, building this world, the universe, the lore, and once it's released, I'll probably play it pretty hardcore because it's basically the game of my dreams and what I've always dreamt of having to play.
That's the ultimate, is to be able to create your perfect company, and in your case, creating your perfect game. Then you're going to want to play it all the time. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about that move to China. You've had a lot of experience since the Ubisoft move back in 2009. How has the country's tech culture progressed, and what are the key differences between the North American startup space and the Asian, specifically Chinese startup space?
Interesting question. So I think the tech scene in China is just massive, and the pace of development is just rapid. So if you look at overall, like the whole China story, the development of the country as a whole, the infrastructure, development, real estate development, everything has been on a breakneck pace. And the whole tech scene has also mirrored that. And you have these giant companies now like Alibaba, Tencent, and they're just dominating. And they're even acquiring companies in the West. So like Tencent has a big stake, I think, in Epic and many other companies. Riot as well, League of Legends, the developer of League of Legends. And the culture is a bit unique. I think in the West, people value equity a lot. They want a stake in the company, that they feel vested in the company. But I would say in China, it's not that big of a thing. People don't really care that much about equity. It's more about getting paid. The work style is also very different. People work really hard, 6 days a week from 9 to 6. There's a saying, it's like 996. But people are not afraid of overtime. And I think in startup culture in the West, there is a lot of that, crunching and pushing really hard too. But I would say it's not at the same level as in China. But the benefit is that people can build entire companies very, very rapidly. You can scale very quickly when you have like an army of developers working like that breakneck pace. And you can talk about, is it a good idea? Is it a good balance of work and life? But I think people in China are okay with working really hard to get ahead.
Obviously, China has a huge story to tell when it comes to crypto. And I want to talk about your move into crypto. You were part of Btcc back in January 2015, which is pretty early for crypto. I mean, as we were discussing before we started recording, that's not really early for Btcc, but it was early for crypto.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us about the first time that you discovered crypto and what inspired the move to Btcc.
So I think I first read about it in 2013. And I knew Bobby Lee, he's the CEO of Btcc, just from social circles. And I've been following Bitcoin. I followed Btcc as well because he joined the company. I think he was counted as a co-founder, but it was actually founded in 2011 by two guys, Yang Ningke and Huang Xiaoyu. But they were the two main guys. And then Bobby came on board and he helped them raise a lot of capital. So I think we raised like 5 million or something from Lightspeed and other investors. And the interesting story is that one of the Btcc co-founders actually coined the name B2B, which is Bitcoin in China. So that's a little snippet of trivia.
Wow.
But yeah.
So B2B is Bitcoin in China. Just explain that.
B2B. It's just phonetic. It's like Bitcoin.
Oh, so the actual sort of phonetic noun in Chinese was invented by him.
Well, yeah, he kind of picked that.
Wow.
I think there was another term as well floating around. Back then, it was not like decided what the name was. I think there was like another name called BB, like B for Bitcoin, and then B is like currency. So it could have been that, but in the end, I think the general consensus was it's B2B. So B2 is like bit, and then B is coin. So it's like Bitcoin.
Wow. So that is some story, actually. Okay, so take us back to that to those early days of Btcc.
Yeah. So Btcc got really big. Well, when I first joined, it was still called BTC China, but I pushed to do a rebrand to Btcc just so it could be more generic. But back then, Gox imploded, and basically everyone went to BTC China to trade because it was the only other big exchange at the time. So that's how Btcc got to be the biggest exchange in the world, just because of Gox really, and being in the right place at the right time. But yeah, it held the record for quite a long time as the biggest exchange in the world. And slowly then we got some competitors. So OKCoin came up, Huobi came up, and then there's like a very fierce competition between the three. And I joined kind of in the middle of the competition, but they got big really fast and they took a lot of market share from BTC China.
So you left just over 2 years later, 2017. A lot of people in the media were speculating it was due to the increasing regulatory pressure. Is that true? And if so, what did you hope for in co-founding Blockstream in your home country of Canada?
So a lot of people thought that I had planned. The timing just kind of worked out really well. I had actually planned to leave in early 2016. Well, I planned to move back to Canada, but when we had to shut down, it made more sense that I would just leave completely because there was no more exchange. And I think I had some differences in opinion too with Bobby on the direction of the business. I wanted to focus on our core revenue-generating businesses like the mining pool and the exchange. Before I left, I had started the US dollar exchange, and then I think they didn't really push it afterwards. I think Bobby was more focused on Mobi. It's a mobile wallet and other products too. But so part of it, I guess, is just a difference in opinion of the direction of the company. And I had known about Blockstream, I think, pretty much when I joined BTC China too, because Blockstream was always a big name in the space, and they're at the forefront of the tech. So I thought, Adam actually tried to get me to join in 2016. So I kind of figured, well, this is a good chance. I'm moving back to Canada, and I can also join Blockstream and help them launch Liquid. So I think the bulk of my dealings with Blockstream at the time was as a customer of Blockstream to be a part of the Liquid network. So we were one of the first exchanges to sign up because I saw the potential of the network and what it could do for Bitcoin trading. And a number of other companies like Zappo, Unocoin, and some others. So they didn't launch it yet. So I decided to join Blockstream to help them launch Liquid. And I thought that will be an interesting challenge.
I want to talk about Liquid Network. Can you explain for our audience, in a nutshell, what is the Liquid Network? Because it's become the core focus from the outside anyway for Blockstream. How would you present it to an audience who don't yet know what Liquid is?
So Liquid is it can do a lot of different things, and that's part of our challenge to market it and explain it to people. When we first launched Liquid, we just focused on Liquid as inter-exchange settlement. And I think that's how we generally start out first when we try to introduce it, just because it has a wide range of capabilities. So the first thing is you can move Bitcoin quickly from exchange to exchange, or brokers, OTC desks, financial companies, and whatnot. But you basically, on Bitfinex, you create a withdrawal, and you punch in a Liquid address from another exchange, and then you can move your Bitcoin in about 2 minutes from exchange to exchange. So very rapid settlement. But Liquid also, when we launched, I decided to push this functionality. We have confidential assets. So you can actually create things like Tether and Liquid, or a JPY stablecoin, or Canadian dollar stablecoin, in addition to other things like game assets. But we hadn't decided if we would include it at launch, but I pushed the team to keep the assets in. So another wide area that Liquid can support is just tokenizing things. And we've kind of pushed on that front to include security tokens as well. We announced Liquid Securities, I think in Consensus 2019. And it's a platform that we've developed that lets you tokenize securities. So Blockstream's vision is kind of re-architecting finance. And I think a large component of finance, or the financial markets, is securities, stocks, bonds, and whatnot. And having this platform to create security tokens on top of Liquid is a step in that direction. So the goal is everything will be a crypto finance instrument in the future. And it can be traded on marketplaces 24/7 and all settled in Bitcoin. So Liquid, as you know, is a Bitcoin sidechain. It doesn't have its own currency. The currency in Liquid is pegged in Bitcoin into the Liquid network. So what you can do is settle these liquid assets, these tokenized stocks or securities with Bitcoin in the form of LBTC, Liquid Bitcoin.
And just take us through the infrastructure of the Liquid network. How decentralized is it?
That's a hot topic. So, some people don't like this, but I'm just going to say it. Decentralization is a spectrum. So there is a federation that manages Liquid network, and there is no center. There are 15 functionaries, and these are the exchanges that run the functionary box. So it's like a 1U server, and they place it into their data center all around the world, different geographical and geopolitical distributions. So it's very difficult to shut down. It's kind of like what Libra wanted to be. It's a robust network that is cross-border and not under any particular jurisdiction. So they're running these functionary boxes that are extending the Liquid blockchain. So they are adding blocks every minute, and they can eventually grow themselves. So we're implementing an upgrade called DynaFed, or Dynamic Federations, so that they can dynamically remove members and add members. So potentially we can have up to 50 members with this functionary box to extend the blockchain and basically operate the network.
So you touched there on Libra. I guess the almost, I wouldn't say collapse. Collapse is a very strong word, but the serious delays in Libra's rollout due to the regulatory pressure must have been a pretty big boon for Liquid, because you become the alternative.
Well, there's a lot of alternatives to Libra. Like, I haven't followed it for maybe 6 months, but the last incarnation that I saw was it would be stable coins and a basket of stable coins. But the thing is, they're trying to create their own blockchain, I guess, or whatever, but that's not really needed. If you look at Tether as an example, it's on multiple chains, and it's fully interoperable. They can move Liquid UST from chain to chain because there is an issuer. So it doesn't really matter what chain they use. People will gravitate towards the chain that they find the most beneficial. And I think Liquid is a strong contender in that field because we have confidential transactions. So all your transactions in Liquid are confidential. We hide the asset type and the amounts. So if I send a Liquid transaction to you, nobody knows if it's Liquid USDT or Liquid Bitcoin or a game token. So it's like Proton Mail. It's all encrypted.
The regulatory pressure, even for Blockstream, I'm sure, must be immense. Take us through some of the challenges that you're facing. I mean, talking about re-architecting finance is a massive vision. And obviously that is in essence the vision of so many people involved in this industry. But the biggest hurdle to truly re-architect finance is going to be to get on the good side of the regulators. How is that going to get done?
Well, for Blockstream, we are just a technology provider. We're not in control of the Liquid network. It's all the different members. So I guess if a regulator wanted to regulate it, they would need to work with all the different members in all the different countries. But the perspective that we have, and we've had some legal opinions on this, is that Liquid is just a common carrier, just like Proton Mail. It's not responsible for the mail that is sent or what they do when they're sending mail. They're just a mail service that doesn't see anything. Liquid can, I think it can survive in this landscape because it is just a mechanism for moving information, right? It's not like it's not a mixer or anything like that. It's just a network where you can transport tokens, essentially. And I think we're leaning more towards the side of regulation. Like one of the things that we're trying to do with Liquid Securities is have the INX security token in Liquid as well. And we're working with some of our partners to get SEC approval for Liquid-based security tokens. So hopefully that can come through Q1 next year. And then INX's token will be on Liquid in addition to that other network.
And there's been a lot of talk of late, and the argument seems to be heating up between Bitcoin and altcoins. And you were recently featured on a panel with Vitalik Buterin on Peter McCormick's What Bitcoin Did podcast, representing the Bitcoin argument. How did you find being in that space? Because you certainly don't come across as a Bitcoin maximalist, but was representing the Bitcoin argument. Was that a sort of difficult role for you to play?
Not really. I mean, it was just debating with Vitalik on a lot of fundamentals and the differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think, I tried to trigger him a bit, but he was very untriggered the whole time. So I think it was good for him. He managed to keep his cool. But, it's really just a discussion, and I don't really think it's a big deal. We were mainly riffing off of the Supply-Gate thing, where Ethereum has no idea how many ethers there are.
Did you find that Vitalik's arguments held weight?
my biggest criticism of Ethereum is that they just have no idea what they're doing, and they're just trying a lot of different things and seeing what sticks and promising the world to everybody, and they keep failing. And I think somewhere in that podcast he admitted, like I said, you're just throwing everything at the wall. He's like, I think he didn't say no. So maybe he agrees. They're just trying a lot of different things. But I did critique him in the podcast and said, a lot of people are getting scammed and buying into the DeFi craze and losing money. And I think afterwards, I don't know if it's because of what I said, but he did post a disclaimer and say, just don't put too much money in this stuff, put enough to experiment, and that's it. So I think he earned a few points for doing that.
Is there not an argument to be made that true decentralization is just a natural evolution? I mean, looking at the Liquid Network's infrastructure and how you have very strategically planned how you build the Liquid Network versus an Ethereum vision, which was built and then just released into the world. Is that not true decentralization? It's just going to be an absolute organic mess?
I guess you could say that. I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of Bitcoiners could tell you from day one that Ethereum would not work. We had the whole debate about block size and everything like that, and people complaining about, not enough block space, blah, 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 fees are going to be expensive. But it's kind of like a system, from a system design perspective, if you look at Bitcoin, that's what's going to happen, right? The block space is finite and it is valuable, and you can't just make it gigabytes in size, or else there's only going to be 10 nodes. And you could look at Ethereum in the same way and realize this thing is not going to work. If anyone actually used this, it's going to crumble under its own weight. And we did see that. So a lot of people trying to make money off of DeFi put money in, and they're paying fees to get it out, but then they're losing all their gains from the yield farming or whatnot. So it's kind of like, if you understand how the system works, you should know it doesn't work. And I think Vitalik should have realized, like, this is a dead end. And I think later on, there was some conference they're at, and he's on stage with Joe Lubin. And I think Joe Lubin says, yeah, we knew from day one it wasn't going to scale. But then if you knew it wasn't going to scale, then why did you promise it and hype it up so big to everybody and dump your bags on them? And I think that's the biggest critique that the Bitcoiners have. Like, you guys know, and you should have known, and you still hyped it up and dumped your tokens on everybody, on all the retails.
What about smart contracts? The argument is, of course, that there is so much on the Ethereum network with people writing smart contracts, distributed applications. Is there room in the decentralized computing space for a virtual machine, or is that just a pipe dream?
Well, I don't think you need a virtual machine. And so DeFi is not decentralized finance at all. It's all centralized. The smart contracts are not that smart either. They get hacked all the time. They're highly insecure, and they all have like emergency keys and backdoors to them. So it's not like it can just run indefinitely without any intervention. Like, all the major smart contracts have a emergency switch in them for someone to go and shut it off, right? So nothing that they're promising is actually real in the sense, like, they're misleading the general public about it. I do think there is a place for actual smart contracts, and that's why we've been investing in Simplicity. It's a smart contracting language for Bitcoin and for Liquid. Even without Simplicity, though, you can have discrete log contracts, or DLCs. Shared Bits and Crypto Garage have been working on some of these discrete log contracts, and that is essentially a smart contract too. So you can have a payout based on certain conditions. But I think the way that Ethereum implemented it is just horrible, and there's a lot better ways that you can do that.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, folks. Short 40-second break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back with Samson Mow after this word from Paxful.
Support for this podcast comes from Paxful. At Paxful, we believe Bitcoin is more than just a digital currency. It's a new way of life that will completely disrupt the global financial system. Paxful is a people-powered marketplace that allows for money transfers with anyone, anywhere, at any time. Using over 300 different payment methods, you can buy and sell Bitcoin using bank transfers, cash, and even gift cards. With borderless transactions, the ability to start a business, along with the numerous opportunities for social good, Paxful is set to change the world. Create an account today to get your free Bitcoin wallet and begin trading right away. Paxful, you'll never look at your money the same way again.
And we're back with Samson Mow, CSO of Blockstream. Samson, I want to talk about Blockstream a little bit more, and specifically go into the launch of your satellites. If I'm not mistaken, you have 2 satellites in space at the moment?
We're leasing 4 satellites. So
Wow.
we didn't actually launch the satellites. We're leasing space on commercial satellites. So the number is like 4 or 5, depending on how you look at it, because there's actually 4 satellites, but there's 5 transponders. And we're paying for 5 transponders. So sometimes you'll hear 4 in the media, sometimes it's 5.
Now, those satellites, are all of them currently running the Bitcoin blockchain, or is it specifically unique to Blockstream's mission?
So the satellites are broadcasting the Bitcoin blockchain. And you can basically sync up from a new node from anywhere in the world that's covered. I think we're covering 99% of the world. And you can just go and set up a node and sync from zero. So we recently released an update where you can get the entire blockchain, whereas previously it was just getting the latest day of blocks. So that's a pretty big innovation, I think.
Absolutely. Now, funding for that must be, paying for satellite space must be pretty enormous. Is this being paid for by capital in the business?
Well, it's not as expensive as you would think, but it's a part of our long-term strategy. So for Blockstream, it's not like we're trying to make something and ship it out and turn a profit quickly in a year. We're working 5 to 10 year time horizons, and there is a business use for Blockstream satellite, and it has to do with our mining operation. So if you can get the blockchain from anywhere in the world, then you can essentially set up a mining operation anywhere in the world where there is cheap power available. So you'll see how it goes, but there's a long-term play here.
I want to come back to some of the other networks. We spoke about Ethereum earlier. Our next guest is Justin Sun of the Tron network. What would you ask Justin?
I would ask Justin, when is Liquid coming to Poloniex? There are some people asking for it and are very interested to be able to make quick transfers of Bitcoin to Poloniex. So I would ask him, what are your thoughts and what are the timelines?
I also want to ask you a question for our next guest, depending on scheduling. It's a South African guest. He's the CEO of South Africa's 3rd largest cryptocurrency exchange, Altcoin Trader. His name's Richard D'Souza. What would you ask the CEO of a South African crypto exchange?
I would ask him, what do you think Fluffy Pony or Ricardo's influence is on the South African cryptocurrency scene?
Very good. I think from my perspective, it's interesting to see not enough people know about Monero and Ricardo in general. I think he's a lot more popular globally than he is in his home country, which he'd probably tell you that anyway.
Interesting.
Samson, I want to, as we bring things in for a close, obviously I know that you've shared a lot about your passion for gaming and your development of Infinite Fleet. Sounds pretty remarkable, actually. I'd love to get your perspective on the Epic Games conflict happening between the App Store, the iOS App Store, and even Google Play Store at the moment. What are your thoughts on what's playing out there with Epic and Fortnite?
Well, I think it's a very interesting thing. It was bound to happen, where you have a studio that has gotten enough power to dare to go up against Apple. So none of the game developers, at least I'm 99% sure, think that the fees are okay. So the Apple tax, the Google tax, Nobody really thinks that those are fair numbers. And then I think Facebook had their tax too on games as well. But at least with Google, you can bypass it, right? They don't force you to pay. Whereas I think Facebook and Apple did. But Facebook's game platform has pretty much fell by the wayside, so it's not an issue now. So it's really just Apple and their dominance. So on one hand, you have Apple, and it's their ecosystem. They built it up themselves, and they've invested a lot into it. And then you have the victims, the companies that have to pay the tax, and that cost gets passed on to the players or the gamers. So it's not a great predicament. And I don't believe like Apple opening up the floodgates to other payment methods is good, because I think it also breaks the Apple seamless ecosystem, right? If you have games that pop out a web browser and take credit cards, it's just going to open up a can of worms, right? It's going to degrade the Apple experience, which is supposed to be very streamlined and perfect UX, and it's going to cause increased fraud and other issues. But I think their 30% is too high. I don't think that's a sustainable model. It's just reaping. It's like taking all the profits and squeezing all the game companies. Like Epic can probably afford it, but there are smaller developers, I think, that that's a pretty big cut, and it might make life difficult for them. So I would think the best compromise is to lower the tax and maybe make it 10% or 15%. I think that is somewhat acceptable instead of opening up the floodgates and letting people have their own third-party payment systems.
From a business strategist perspective, do you think that's feasible for someone like Apple? They've become so accustomed to 30%, and there's going to be a revenue line there. If they even drop that to 20%, that's a significant drop. That's a 1/3 drop in revenue line. Do you think that's feasible?
Well, I think they're going to fight it tooth and nail. Like, no one's willingly going to give up revenue. But the flip side is it's very difficult. Like, people love Apple's ecosystem, and they're not going to easily give it up. I hope Epic can force some change through, whether it's lowering the tax or opening up the ecosystem. But it's also highly unlikely, just because Apple's Apple. They don't need to do anything they don't want to do, and you're free to do everything else on your own outside of their ecosystem. What's
your gut feel that the outcome is going to be?
I think nothing's going to change.
I think the same way,
sadly.
Personally, yeah. I mean, it is sad, and I do think the same way. But perhaps we'll see Epic grow. Maybe they bring out another blockbuster like Fortnite, and they can grow in influence and size. But time will tell. Samson, gaming developer, gamer like yourself, now in finance and the future of finance. If you had to choose one, which industry has most of your attention right now?
That's tricky. I mean, both. That's probably not the answer you're looking for, but what we're doing at Blockstream, I think, is it's reaching a tipping point soon where we have all the different pieces that we need. We've been building out this infrastructure layer with our wallets and products, and I think the whole market is going to start moving towards security tokens, and we're going to see more and more projects coming out on that front. Also, Blockstream mining has been ramping up over time. We have some interesting ways to bring the two together, which will be announced in the next couple months, hopefully. But I think it's a really interesting time, and it's going to get very hot. For the game side, we're actually using a lot of Blockstream's tech. So we have a security token for Infinite Fleet. So Infinite Fleet has a dual token model. There's a utility token, which is the game currency. And I think that's also very interesting too. It's essentially replacing World of Warcraft gold with a finite crypto asset. So players can actually take it. It's portable. They can take it out of the game, trade peer-to-peer, do whatever they want with it. But the other side is the fundraising. So we're raising capital using the EXO token, which is a security token, and we're using Blockstream's tech. And the plan later on down the road is the utility token called INF will also be able to leverage a lot of Blockstream's tech as well and kind of showcase it. So one interesting thing is a liquid token can have a Lightning network spun up on top of it, assuming enough liquidity. So INF token could be transported peer-to-peer through its own Lightning network. And I think this is all very interesting stuff, like taking a lot of the crypto technology and applying it to a major AAA game.
Absolutely. I mean, it really does seem like a match made in heaven. The in-game tokens and in-game currency, being able to withdraw that into the real world and trade that it's a game changer. I want to talk about the security token, and you guys are working on a number of security tokens. That seems to be one of the biggest regulatory hurdles for people raising funds in this space at the moment. Naturally, it makes sense to just hold a security token offering because it's the best way to incentivize people to invest. But of course, the moment you're offering a security, you are under the influence of the SEC, specifically in America, the USA. I'm not too familiar with Canada, but even here in South Africa, Europe, a lot of those regulatory jurisdictions are very similar to the SEC, not as heavy-handed, but very similar. How would you advise people who are looking at security token offerings go about performing those offerings in the easiest way forward without sort of spinning it that actually we're a utility token, whereas actually they aren't?
Yeah, most utility tokens are actually securities, but I think the SEC is going after some of them. There's probably a lot more that they could go after if they wanted to, just because they're obviously securities. But I think the days are past where you can just say, we're using blockchain technology and it's not a security because it has some utility to it, right? I think those days are long gone.
Yeah.
There's just way too much risk these days, and the regulators know, what's going on, and I think they're better equipped to tackle these. So the other side of the equation is the regulatory landscape has changed a lot. In the US, you have Reg D filings, and those are pretty straightforward. So we filed Reg D for EXO in the US, and that's pretty easy, I would say. They also have Reg A plus and Reg S, and all the regulation has been amended and streamlined because these are designed for smaller companies to use to raise money. They're not meant to be prohibitive, right? Companies raising capital is a good thing for the economy, so they streamlined a lot of that, and you can use those to do a tokenized offering as well. We're working very closely with Stalker. They're based in Luxembourg, so they're handling our European EXO token issuance, and the regulatory landscape there has also changed a lot too. They're able to complete most of the filings in a matter of months, and the cost is not astronomical. You're spending tens of thousands or 100,000 to do this, not millions of dollars. So it's just a question of, like, at this point, do you want to, break the law, or do you want to follow the regulation and pay a little bit of money and be regulated? And I think companies are going to start to follow that route, and that's why we're going to see more and more security tokens, because the risk is massive. If you do a security token offering and say it's a utility token, you're going to have a lot of problems later. And the difficulty is not that high, the cost is not that high. So we're going to see a shift. I think a lot of people just don't bother with it because, if you can be offshore and, be pseudonymous or whatever, then you can do an ICO and raise money. But, I would like to think that investors are getting more savvy, and they're not just going to throw money into these projects where people can just up and leave and disappear and steal. So I think there is a change coming.
I think that's really what people need to hear right now. A lot of people just don't want to spend the initial capital to get on the good side of the regulators. Samson, just in closing, you've been incredibly experienced in the tech industry, both in Asia and North America, globally, gaming. decentralized finance, and obviously have been at the heart of so much of the tech industry in general. What advice would you give to youngsters right now, just leaving school, starting college? Where should they look? Should it just be general software engineering? Should they focus on a more niche industry like blockchain tech, perhaps gaming? Where is the big opportunity within tech at the moment for young people?
I think there's a lot of opportunities. You don't have to go into programming to be in tech. Tech needs designers, product people, project management people, UI design, UX design. These are all important pieces of the puzzle. If you're talking about the cryptocurrency space, UI and UX is a huge part of it, and we need a lot of improvements to make things accessible for the mass market. Square recently announced their initiative, like they're starting up a design initiative where they're trying to get more designers to improve Bitcoin usability. And I think these are all good initiatives. So it's really just like trying to figure out what you are passionate about and going deep and trying to master it and absorb everything. You can go to school, or you can learn yourself, or just offer to do it pro bono and get the experience too. But the key is just mastering your craft.
So I think the key there is figuring out, which is difficult for a youngster, figuring out what they're passionate about right now.
Yeah, but the good thing is that if you're young, you have lots of time. So just try it out, join a company and learn, like take an entry-level position and figure it out. Like what I've realized, like when I was in school, like you really don't really know how a company operates until you go there and you learn all the intricacies. And I think the best way is just to jump in and get that exposure and that experience. And then it helps you to figure out what you want to do. Wow.
Well, Samson Mow, CSO of Blockstream, game developer, still a game developer. Can't wait to see Infinite Fleet in the years to come. Thank you so much for joining us on Global Crypto.
Thanks, James. It's been great.
It really has been a great chat. Take care of yourself, and hopefully we'll chat to you again soon.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
Government should be a partner. Partner.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone.